Now we are recording. Good morning again, or good day wherever you are. My name is Beatrice Achaleke. I am the author of the Africa for Smart Kids book series, and we are launching this series of conversations with people of African descent, with African people whose opinion I respect and cherish. And it is all about us, about Africans, about our identity, about being African and being a proud African, and about the contribution that we know that our continent, Africa, makes in the world. So today, in this Zoom conversation, I'm speaking to Primus Tazanu. He is based in Denmark. This conversation this morning is between South Africa and Denmark. So you kindly introduce yourself, Primus.
Yes. Thank you very much for this initiative. I am Primus Tazanu. I'm Cameroonian, and I am an anthropologist based here in Copenhagen in Denmark. I first came to Denmark in 2001, and ever since I've been here around, and I've been also to Germany to study, to work in Switzerland, and to South Africa, and also I've been working in Cameroon. And about a year ago, I decided to return to Denmark because I have a son here.
Okay.
Yeah.
How is your son doing this morning?
He is well. He is well playing his computer games as usual.
The online generation.
They have their own type of, they have their own world where it is difficult. I don't know if it's difficult, but it is hard to catch up with because they grow up in a different generation.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
That takes us straight into the conversation. What does it feel like to be parenting in an environment which is different from the one in which you grew up?
Oh, plenty of challenges and opportunities as well. Because most of us would like our children to grow up the way we grew up. Like for me, I grew up in the village in Fontaine, in Cameroon, and my daily activities were fairly planned around the family. A typical day will be, while I wake up in the morning, I go to fetch water in the spring, or I wash dishes, come back home, take my breakfast, and then run about 2 kilometers to school. So that was basically my life between Monday and Friday. And on Saturdays in the morning, we go to the farm. And the only day we rested was on Sunday when we went to the church. And after that, we played football and also visited our grandparents and also other villagers who were sick or had invited us to their place. But nowadays, my son, honestly, I don't know what he's doing. When he wakes up in the morning, he takes breakfast and he goes to school. When he comes back, he goes into his room and does his things. He has a very mediated life, I should say. Mm-hmm. Most of his life is mediated. He's on the computer, playing games, connecting with friends, and even sometimes when you're eating with him, he's on his smartphone, pressing things. These games, they are running up and down, and I have just no clue. So that is one of the challenges that I face, but it is also an opportunity because through some of these games and this interaction, they are trying to create their own reality based on the reality of the world they live in, or the world we live in. So I should say maybe it's me who's not catching up. Yes, yeah.
That challenge is the one that I face as well as a parent. You know, when mine were growing up, today there's 16 and 15. When they were growing up, we had this story time. I used to tell them stories about my upbringing. I grew up in Fontaine like you, so I could tell them those stories, and we loved them. But as they grew up, I got that conversation with them when my daughter would say, "Mom, don't take it personally. I love you. But we're neither from the same generation nor from the same culture. You are the offline generation, the newspaper generation, and I am the digital generation." So it's a challenge that many parents face today, not just those who are living outside of the continent, but I see it's a trend in the continent. But let's bring it to the point where you said it could also be an opportunity. The content of the games that our kids play online are very much foreign content. So now if we can switch that into a possibility and say what kind of content, we can take them offline, that is the generation and they should be online, but what kind of content do we propose to them? And I see a series of African games being produced now with a lot of young Africans. Do you think that could be an answer to the challenge, or that could be the way of switching the challenge into an opportunity for them?
Yes, I very much believe so, because we live in a very diverse world. And if you are unable to control what your child consumes, then somebody will feed the child with whatever they think is best for them. And this is for most guided by the capitalist way of life, which is money, money, money. So I very much like that African games they developed for our kids so that they get a diversity, they get to know the other side. And I would like to emphasize that most games that are originated from Africa or that should originate from Africa often think not in a particular way. They try to be universal because they also embrace the Western way of representation, which means it is more diverse and more broad and broader, I should say. Unlike here in the West, where well, you know, most things since they believe they represent the highest echelon of human development, everything is perfect. Which is not true because Europe is just like a province. We have to provincialize European practices and such. When I watched Black Panther about 2 weeks ago, I was quite pleased by the way in which people talk about it. When afterwards, when I went to an African event, and my son has actually watched it 2 times, and he likes it. So if we live in a world where Africa is often represented as, in terms of lack, in terms of catching up, and at the same time, we see that Africa is a product of modernity, which means Africa is what it is because it is designed to be what it is. Then we have to question if the representations that people make of Africa should continue to be seen as authentic because somebody is poor in Africa because there's some rich European. Somebody is products are not being paid. I mean, they're not being bought at the price that are supposed to be bought because somebody is exploiting that person. So these are some of the things that I very much believe we as Africans have to use the space within the social media, within digital media to create, to raise an awareness that we are not we, we, we are not who lack, and that we don't consciously create a society in which we suffer. No, it is not like that. A society in which we suffer has been created by the global capitalist system. Yes.
Primus, can you please sit a little bit up? Your face is right.
Yes.
That's exactly. Now I have you good in the picture.
Okay.
Let's go back to the conversation. You touch on very sensitive and important things. Before we get into the picture of Africa, the perceptions of Africa that is created by whoever, and we know who that is, capitalism, you put a name on it. There are many other names that we can call. Let's go back to your life in Denmark. What is the typical, let me put it in a very stereotype way. What is it like being an African in Denmark? How does your day look like? What conversations do you have around you? What do people say, and how do you feel?
My life in Denmark, I very much feel like, I mean, I've tried to make myself home here, but the truth is that you're always often reminded that this is not your place. The interaction you have, maybe in the market, maybe on the street, in social events, where you have different, I should say, races. To the extent that you feel at times that it is good for you to lock up yourself, confine yourself to a particular place because the world outside is hostile to you. the world outside there where you think you should belong doesn't really want to accept you. And my daily life is, well, I spend most of my day at home, writing, applications, and also developing notes from my keywords that I've done over the years. Most of my time is spent home. And if I want to socialize, most often I meet, let's say, liberal beings, liberal whites, who are friends to me, or I meet other Africans, particularly Cameroonians. If I don't meet them, we get to talk on the phone or we chat, and most often the conversation will reflect how we feel in this society, how we feel rejected. Yeah, most often the conversation also switches to that dimension. And also, we romanticize home. Yeah, you see home as that ideal place where your soul belongs. That is why most of us, I don't spend up to a year continuously in Europe. I often, I always travel. For the past 8 years, 10 years, I travel at least twice a year to visit my homeland. Yeah.
Which is somehow paradoxical because you leave Africa and you go to Europe because you think you're in search of greener pastures. And when you get there, could you really say there are greener pastures there? And what is it that you miss from home?
So, what I miss from home, first of all, is the sociality, the interaction, the acceptance. You know, if you look at the history of the world, especially the history of the black man, you see that capitalism, racism, colonialism, apartheid, and all forms of oppression that have been directed at us, see yet we are happy, see yet we overcome, see yet we are able to say we exist, we are able to wake up, straighten ourselves, and walk with our back high up there in the sky, and say, well, we can cruise this world. So we have been tested, and this test has made us stronger, meaning that I can stay anywhere around the world. I mean, when I stay in Denmark, I know, well, my condition here is temporary. I don't think it is permanent. It is just a condition that I don't believe will be forever because we always think that we'll get back home. Well, maybe when we get to the retirement age, we'll get back home. Maybe not. But that time is still far in the future. But for me, home is home. You try to make yourself home here, but once in a while, you are reminded that this is not belonging to you. You don't belong here.
Mm. You said some. No. Let's go back to the second part of my question.
Yeah.
When you say Africa in Denmark, what do people associate Africa with? Africa, what does it mean? What do people in Denmark see Africa to be?
Well, when I converse with Danes, basically, they think Africa is a country. I mean, that's what most white people say. And if you go to a social gathering and somehow you're unable to dance, you're seen as a failure because they believe Africans are dancers and entertainers. But I, I just find it a little fascinating because these stereotypes about Africans as being happy dancers are somehow contrasted by the images we often see on the TV, on the magazines about suffering children with flies around their mouths. So there's a certain degree to which we have to be a little conscious of certain manipulations that are ongoing in the Western media to portray Africa as a country that is in perpetual childhood. So I don't know if I
You
touched the
did.
base.
You did. I think it's pretty much the same question, the same image everywhere, that people have this generally negative perceptions about Africa,
Yeah,
that people know so little about Africa. And this is
yeah,
also why we're having this conversation.
yeah,
Because I think if we Africans will start telling our stories, our story of Africa, the Africa that we know or that we should know, that may go a long way to change some of those perceptions that the world has about Africa. And if those perceptions are changed, the relationship that we have with them and that which they have with Africa will definitely change as well.
Yeah.
So, being an African, a knowledgeable African, you've traveled around. You are an academia. You have stayed and worked in different European countries. What is the story of Africa that you want to tell the people around you? If this was the moment for you to tell them.
Yeah, before I move into that, I would also I would like to mention that the invention, I would say the invention and the representation of Africa in a very negative light is not only done by the outsider.
Mm-hmm.
Africans are also doing it,
Mm-hmm.
and so we have to acknowledge this. And there's something we can do about it. And the way we can do about it is not like, well, you cannot like say I want to prove myself that I exist. You see, what we should do, in my opinion, should be do what you think is best for you. Do what you think is best for Africa. You don't need to try to defend yourself, because most often what we hear when we see people try to talk about Africa, they are motivated by the idea that I have to prove that I am an African. I have to prove that we exist. Of course, people know you exist, but just do what you think will make you represented in a very positive light. So when I encounter people and they tell me, well, I don't dance well. So what I bet now ask them, what you see on the surface, what you see on this thing is just thing.
Primus, you're breaking a little bit for our listeners. The internet connection between Denmark and South Africa sometimes has this short disturbances, but we are not letting that stop our conversation. So it's like we're back. We're
Yeah.
back on the net. We're back.
Yeah, yeah.
So please carry on.
Yeah, what I was saying is, we should not be pushed to the corner where we start being defensive of who we are.
Mm-hmm.
We just have to do the things that we know would portray a positive image of Africa, like what we are doing right now, writing children's books. I remember when I was growing up, I didn't read any African book. Well, I started reading Achebe. Achebe is very dense. I started reading Achebe when I was in my mid-teens. And I should believe by the age of 12, I must have read about, many, many African books. But I never did read an African book. The only children books that I read were part of the literature in the junior secondary school. You can think of Treasure Island, The Adventures of Tom Sawyer.
Mm-hmm.
And I would say I had a privilege to read some of these books because I went to secondary school. And because my secondary school had a library, and I could read quite a lot of books, children's books, and also, fairy tales in the library in Institute of Wisdom where I attended secondary school. But this was not a privilege for most kids of my generation. So what we find now is we have to make sure that we follow a footstep that you are that you are engaging in, which is writing children's books. Let the children know Africa from the eyes of Africans, from the perspective of Africans. There is no way that an outsider will write about you that will make you feel included the way you want it to be.
Mm-hmm.
So we should not wait for another generation to do this job for us. We should, even if we are just starting, we should start and then another generation would follow.
Mm-hmm.
It is not only about writing books, but it's also about many other things which we think are important for representing Africa. Those, especially when we look into politics, the politicians that stay in power and the politicians that oppress people, we as Africans have to say, these people don't represent us. These are not the type of Africans we know. These are the type of Africans that collude with capitalism and Western governments to oppress their citizens, which means the Western governments also participate in the oppression of Africans. And before the video break, I was trying to say this body color is just a cover. because most often when Africans are represented, there is a tendency to de-intellectualize them, which means you just look at them at the surface. He's a black person. He's an empty. He's irrational. He cannot do anything productive. But we are more than that. We know we are more than the body color that covers us. So we should not allow this intellectualization of Africa that has been taking place to continue, which means writing books like you are doing. If tomorrow my son gets a book and then he sees that it is written by Beatrice Achaleke, this is a name that is not associated with the West. He will know that, well, Africans are writing books. That is my opinion about it.
Thank you for mentioning the Africa for Smart Kids book series. If you are interested and you want to read those books, they are more than just children's books. You can go on Amazon, you'll find them, but you can also visit our website, www.globuntubooks.com. You have 7 books at the moment, but there are many more upcoming books. And we invite young authors, if you think you have a story to write, and I know you have one, you're looking for a publisher, all you need to do is to drop us a note. The email is on the website, so we can coach you through your writing process. Africa needs stories. Primus, remember when we were growing up, our grandparents, the grandparents were like our TV. You will gather around the fireside after dinner, and you will get told all those stories. Our children don't get told those stories, especially those of them who grow up in the diaspora. I think we parents were so involved in making life work, in coming to terms with a different culture, in finding a job, in meeting the financial needs of our kids, that we don't get around to telling these stories. Do you think, or what do you think we can do in order to revive to a certain extent? I mean, we don't want to bring back that period. It's not part of the reality of our kids. But what can we parents do to instill that wisdom? Because the stories that we got told were stories that carried a lot of wisdom, a lot of knowledge, and a lot of things and experiences that made you a proud African.
Those stories were very, I can still remember a lot of them.
And Nancy the Connie Spider, you know the story of how the tortoise won the
Yes, the white tortoise, and I remember all those stories. And you see, basically, those stories were very instructive. I mean, the spaces within which these stories were told were very important, because we sat around the fireside and we're telling these stories deep into the night. And I'm very much interested in that space where people sit together and do things together, which is something I know can happen nowadays, wherever we are. And I think I remember a few years ago, you and I were talking about book club, about children in the diaspora forming book club to read the African books and also exchange ideas. So this concept of the family sitting around the fire could also be, be replicated in this way, whereby you have kids of African descent and also any other kids who are interested in African stories coming together, maybe every Saturday or maybe every Sunday. They spend about 2 or 3 hours telling stories or sharing stories that they have read in the books that you and I have written, or they share stories about what they heard their parents told them. So that is how I see it. We cannot replicate what happened in the past, but the concept, the ideas, the coming together, the space could be provided, which allows our kids and also ourselves. Of course, we should also participate in those spaces. We should participate in those spaces and share the stories that we know. So I think that is what that is as far as that is what I can think about this particular type of storytelling that we witness as children.
I'll need you to sit back again. I'm losing part of your head. I don't want to lose your brain. Thank you. Thank you also for mentioning that another program of the Africa for Smart Kids book series, the Smart Clubs. We have the Africa for Smart Kids clubs where we encourage storytelling and much more than just that. We encourage kids to write their stories. We coach them through the writing process. So we have a master class for smart young writers. We have the smart debaters. They have to learn how to build their arguments, but also to research into topics that are key to them and present them in public in form of debates. We have the smart investigators. They go out, they do investigations, they do their own reporting on the image of Africa that they want to see. We have the Africa for Smart Kids, the quiz. This really allowed them to taste their knowledge of Africa when they have read the Africa for Smart Kids book series or other books. There are general knowledge quiz. And then we have the musical, which is a accumulation of all these activities. It helps kids to blend the activities with African music, performances, and different kinds of creative work. So this is happening already in Johannesburg. We're looking forward to opening as many clubs as possible in communities. If you're listening to us and you're interested in having a club in your community, do feel free to drop us an email. We will be more than delighted and excited to help you start up your club. Now, Primus, I'll take you back to our conversation. You mentioned Black Panther.
Yeah.
Many people of African descent, they love Black Panther. There is a big hype around the Black Panther film, which I have watched. I loved it, but I think it's still very aggressive. It's very aggressive, I have to say that. No doubt it's for kids after 10. But the hype around this film is enormous. What does it tell you? What does it tell you about us? Why is there such a hype?
I would I would make a confession right now that I hardly watch movies. I was basically dragged to watch Black Panther by an African American friend who lives here in Denmark. I hardly watch movies. I watch documentaries, news, read books, but movies, I often sleep and I can hardly recollect stories after I watch movies. But Black Panthers, I know it has a lot of shortcomings. In my opinion, as you say, it is violent, and also there are certain pronunciations that I don't say that I don't really necessarily agree. I mean, telling people that they should not let refugees in because they'll come in with their problems, and also this understory, this story behind the story, which tells of Africans in Africa not really working well with Africans in America or African Americans, as represented by Mr. Killmonger. But I attended an event 1 week after watching the movie, and it was all positive reviews that people made of the movie because they felt this represented them. And we should not forget that, well, Black Panther is part of the capitalism, part of the big money. And they did the movie because they know what money will come out of it. And
but also, I think the hype tells me that there is a hunger that people like you and I, be it on the continent or in the diaspora, they hunger for stories of African successful stories, stories that match up to the decade that we are into. You know, the images of the film industry that we are into. An action film, they want their heroes and sheroes. So this is one of the things that comes into my mind. So I'm saying, could this be this is our decade? We have the Black Panther movie on. We have the UN International Decade of People of African Descent that started in 2015 and is running up to 2024, even though not many people know about it and it hasn't really got more content. Is this a framework that we can work with? We have the African Union's Agenda 2063, which has a lot of very interesting aspirations for young people, for Africans at home and in the diaspora. We are celebrating Nelson Mandela's centenary this year, who was a very noble son of Africa, who is respected across the globe. We have the Africa for Smart Kids book series, and we are launching the clubs as well. And at the same time, we're having there's huge conversation. And I think last week there was a free trade agreement that was signed in Kigali by 44 of the 54 African countries. So we have all of these frameworks around us. Can we say this is our time? What can we make out of it in order to really change the image and the perceptions that people have about Africa?
Yeah, we've had our times most often. I am very much. I don't know. I don't know if I should say I'm a pessimist. I'm saying this particularly to political leadership, whereby you see leaders in Africa. I mean, you know, they formed the OAU more than 50 years ago. After it transformed to the AU, and they have all these beautiful organizations. They also signed. They also belong to very beautiful international organizations that I mean supposedly benefiting Africans. Signing a trade deal for me is a very good thing because most often Africans want to target the European markets, which are very close. Capital will flow, but African goods and people are not allowed to flow as fast as the capital of the Europeans or the capital of the Africans. I mean, the money that is needed from our government. What I see in this, in all what is mentioned, are opportunities, but we don't have to be too optimistic because most often our leaders have failed us. What I would urge Africans is that they should hold these leaders accountable. They should tell them that this is what they signed. This is what we said we will do. And if they don't do what they promised to do, them out of the office. If they don't allow Africans to freely move or to freely trade, we have to question them. For me, what Africa needs most is this ability of the citizens to question leadership without fear and without fear of reprisal.
And now, sometimes I have the feeling that we give too much power to the so-called political leadership. We know that the real power is the economic power. That is the power that be. It rules the political power. So I'm thinking, instead of, yes, we should question them, but instead of investing all our energy and the resources in questioning the political powers that are not being, what if we focus on creating the Africa that we want to see? Primus, are you still here or are you frozen? It looks like Primus is frozen. I hope that the network will connect again. I hope that the network is active again. So he's back. You were frozen. Network is unstable. It's on my screen. But I'm glad you're back. So I was saying, instead of putting all our energy in questioning the political powers, can we say we put 30% in questioning the political powers and 70% in creating the society that we want to see, because I think it's possible. Our Primus is breaking and freezing. That's internet connection between South Africa and Denmark, between Johannesburg and Copenhagen. I'm still hoping that Yes, you're back, Primus?
Yeah, you're back now. Yeah, you were frozen for quite some time.
Okay, I freeze on your side and you freeze on mine as well.
Okay. Yeah.
So I was saying, yes, what if we decide to invest 30% in questioning our leader? Oh, dear listeners, please just bear with us. The network is breaking again. So let's see if Primus is back.
Yeah, let's see if you are back.
Oh la la, it's not very good. The network is still not very good. I am interrupting the recording for a while